This is the moment many prayed would never come, and yet deep down, some always feared it would. The Tennessee Bureau of Investigation has just announced a discovery that could alter the course of one of America's most haunting missing child cases. Human remains have been found, and the question racing through every parent's mind, every investigator's desk, and every neighbor in Hawkins County is this: have they just found Summer Wells? For more than 2 years, Summer's disappearance has hung like a storm cloud over rural Tennessee. Her face has been imprinted in our minds, her story told and retold, each detail dissected by media, by investigators, and by communities online. She wasn't just another name in an Amber Alert. She was a daughter, a sister, a child who vanished in broad daylight, leaving behind only questions and a trail of pain that never healed. And now this discovery threatens to reopen every wound while raising the one question no family ever wants to face. If this is Summer, how did she end up here? But as with every high-profile case, announcements like this carry weight far beyond the words themselves. Law enforcement isn't simply sharing updates. They're carefully choosing what to reveal, when to reveal it, and how to frame it. And tonight, we're going to dig into that. What does this discovery mean? Does it point to an accident covered up, a crime long hidden, or something even more sinister? And perhaps the hardest question of all, why now? Why, after all this time, does the case suddenly take this turn? Because let's be clear, remains being found doesn't close the book on Summer Wells. If anything, it rips open a new chapter. One where speculation collides with forensic evidence. One where timelines, interviews, and contradictions will be put under the harshest light yet. And one where accountability, whether from family, neighbors, or institutions, may finally be demanded in full. Tonight on Detective Max, we're not chasing rumors. We're dissecting the facts, unpacking the silences, and asking the questions many are too afraid to ask. Because if this is truly Summer, then the search for her is over. But the search for truth, for justice, and for answers, that fight is only just beginning. This is a movement for truth, and every single subscriber is part of that fight. One voice alone can be ignored, but thousands of voices demanding justice. That's how we put pressure on the system. That's how we force answers. That's how we become the voice these victims never had. But before we dive into this, kindly subscribe to our channel if you believe in fighting for justice. Because every view, every comment, every subscriber is a stand against silence and a step toward justice for those who cannot fight for themselves. We've just crossed 5,000 subscribers, all because of your support, and we need that same energy to reach 6,000, then 7,000, and then 10,000. So go ahead and drop your fingerprints on that subscribe button and where you watching from, because wherever you are, the day this vision is fulfilled, I will send my appreciation straight to you. Let's keep building this community that fights for justice together. Reports are flooding in, breaking headlines that have the power to change everything we thought we knew about the disappearance of Summer Wells. The Tennessee Bureau of Investigation has allegedly uncovered human remains believed to be connected to Summer. After more than 2 years of mystery, heartbreak, dead ends, and unanswered questions, could this finally be the turning point the world has been waiting for? Or is it another devastating twist in a case already clouded with confusion and silence? This is not just another update. This is a potential breakthrough in one of the most scrutinized and emotionally charged missing child cases in America. Tonight, we're going to pull apart what this discovery means, what the timing tells us, and why the way this information is delivered by law enforcement matters just as much as the evidence itself. Because when it comes to Summer Wells, every word, every pause, and every carefully chosen statement carries weight. For the Wells family, this news could bring a cruel kind of closure, or reopen old wounds in ways they never imagined. For the Hawkins County community, it stirs up a storm of fear, suspicion, and renewed tension. And for the public following worldwide, it forces us to confront the hardest truth of all. If these remains are Summer's, then we are no longer just searching for a missing child. We're looking at a crime scene, a cover-up, or a tragedy finally uncovered. So the question we begin with tonight is simple. Why now? Why here? And why in this way? Stay with me, because on Detective Max, we don't just report the headlines, we break them down, piece by piece, until the bigger picture starts to emerge. To truly understand the magnitude of tonight's breaking development, we need to step back and revisit the case that has haunted both Hawkins County and the entire nation. It was June 15, 2021, an ordinary summer day that turned into a nightmare. 5-year-old Summer Wells was reported missing from her home in the Beach Creek community of Rogersville, Tennessee. In the official account, Summer was last seen outside near her family's home that afternoon. Within hours, her disappearance triggered an Amber Alert across the state. What began as a local search for a little girl quickly escalated into one of the most extensive manhunts Tennessee has ever seen. Hundreds of searchers descended on the area, ground teams combing through rugged terrain, K-9 units sweeping fields and forests, divers scouring ponds and creeks, and aerial drones mapping out areas thought impossible to reach on foot. Helicopters hovered over ridges and valleys. The effort was massive, relentless, and deeply public. Yet even with the intensity of those first critical days, no trace of Summer was found. But as the search stretched into weeks and months, the focus shifted. Family dynamics became a point of scrutiny. Neighbors gave conflicting accounts of what they saw or didn't see. Rumors spread online, feeding a wildfire of suspicion and speculation. The Wells family faced waves of media pressure, with interviews that raised more questions than answers. Every word from Don and Candus Wells was dissected. Every gesture became evidence in the court of public opinion. And yet, despite the endless speculation, one undeniable truth remained: Summer was gone. No footprints, no confirmed sightings, no belongings recovered. Just silence, silence from the woods, silence from potential witnesses, and silence from law enforcement beyond carefully measured statements. For more than 2 years, this silence has defined the case. Confusion, suspicion, and a heartbreaking lack of closure left an entire community fractured and the nation's eyes fixed on East Tennessee. Until now. Because if the reports are correct, if the remains just uncovered are Summer's, then the quiet void that has surrounded this case for over 2 years has finally been broken. The question is, does this discovery bring us closer to truth, or does it deepen the mystery further? Now that we've revisited the timeline, let's focus on what's being reported tonight: the alleged discovery of human remains. According to the initial wave of coverage, the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation has confirmed that remains were located in a rural, heavily wooded area of Hawkins County, an area not far from where Summer Wells vanished more than 2 years ago. The location is being described as remote, difficult to access, and not within the primary search grids established back in 2021. This immediately raises questions. Was this area truly overlooked, or has it only recently become relevant due to new information? Let's pause on the language being used. Officials are saying remains found, but not positively identified. That distinction matters. To the public, those two phrases may sound interchangeable. To investigators, they mean something very different. Remains found means there is physical evidence, but no DNA, dental, or forensic confirmation has yet been made. Positively identified requires lab work, matching profiles, and in many cases, painstaking comparison that can take weeks. The difference is the line between speculation and fact, and this is where caution becomes critical. In cases like this, media and online chatter often race ahead of official confirmation. Every phrase, every hesitation in a statement becomes a trigger for rumor. But what matters most in this moment is forensic confirmation. Without it, what we have is possibility, not certainty. Hope for an answer, but not closure. So why now? Why here? After more than 2 years of exhaustive searches, countless interviews, and an investigation that's gone national, what led law enforcement to this site? Was it a tip, a re-examination of old leads? New technology, such as ground-penetrating radar or refined mapping, that directed investigators back into overlooked areas? Or could it be connected to someone finally speaking out, offering information they'd withheld until now? The timing is significant. Discoveries like this rarely happen by accident. They happen because someone somewhere said or did something that shifted the focus. And the fact that law enforcement is even acknowledging this discovery publicly means they view it as potentially significant. But as of this moment, one thing is clear: they are carefully managing their words, and in an investigation already plagued by rumor and misdirection, that caution is deliberate. For the Wells family, the community, and everyone who has followed this case, this moment is monumental. But it is also fragile. Because until science confirms what hope or fear may suggest, we are walking the line between devastating truth and one more painful dead end. If these remains are confirmed to be Summer's, the emotional fallout will be immeasurable. For Don and Candus Wells, this moment represents the nightmare they've both braced for and desperately tried to deny. In interviews over the past 2 years, we've seen their shifting tones, sometimes defensive, sometimes pleading, sometimes resigned. They have lived under the weight of suspicion, media scrutiny, and their own complicated past. The discovery of remains, if confirmed, changes their reality forever. It transforms speculation into tragedy. For parents, hope is often the last shield against despair, and when that shield collapses, it doesn't bring peace. It brings a void filled with grief, guilt, and the crushing weight of finality. The Hawkins County community will also feel this impact deeply. For over 2 years, neighbors have prayed, searched, and whispered about what might have happened to that little girl from Ben Hill Road. Some spoke of seeing strange vehicles, others doubted every official narrative. Churches held vigils, candles were lit, and the community united under the banner of hope. But when hope turns to heartbreak, that unity is tested. Communities often fracture in these moments, some seeking justice, some seeking blame, and some retreating into silence. And in small towns, silence often speaks louder than words. The role of the church cannot be overlooked. Summer's story has been interwoven with faith gatherings, prayers, and public calls for divine intervention. If her remains have been found, pastors and congregations will shift from prayers for her safe return to prayers for healing, comfort, and strength in the face of devastation. That is not just a symbolic change, it is a seismic one. Because when a community's prayers move from rescue to mourning, it reshapes the collective heart of an entire town. Local media, too, will play a role in shaping the emotional landscape. Their headlines, their framing, their choice of words, "closure remains," confirmed, will ripple through households and social feeds. But for families and neighbors, those words aren't just headlines. They are wounds. They are reminders that a child they once saw laughing in her yard, running through her home, is now gone forever. And perhaps the most devastating shift of all is this: the movement from hope of rescue to grief of confirmation. It is a cruel transition, one that leaves families not with relief, but with more questions than answers. Questions about how this happened, why it took so long, who may be responsible, and whether justice will ever truly be served. As one grieving parent once said in a similar case, "Hope kept me alive. When hope died, a part of me died with it." For Don and Candus, for Summer's siblings, and for every neighbor who lit a candle in her name, this is that moment. The moment when hope collapses into tragedy, and the search for truth becomes the only path forward. When human remains are discovered in a case like Summer Wells, the investigation enters one of its most critical and delicate phases. This is where speculation must give way to science. Every single piece of evidence, every bone fragment, every trace of soil, every fiber found, becomes a silent witness that could finally speak to what really happened. The first step is DNA testing. Investigators will collect samples from the remains and cross-reference them against known DNA profiles from Summer's personal items, her toothbrush, her hairbrush, or existing family DNA already on record. This process is precise, but it can take days, even weeks, depending on the condition of the remains. Weathering, decomposition, and exposure all play roles in how intact that genetic evidence is. Still, DNA is one of the strongest tools we have to confirm identity, beyond doubt. Next comes the autopsy. Even if the body has been reduced to skeletal form, forensic pathologists can uncover key details, fractures, injuries, or marks that may indicate cause of death. Were there signs of blunt force trauma, evidence of strangulation, indicators of poisoning or neglect? Every mark tells a story, and forensic experts are trained to read those stories, even years later. Toxicology is another vital layer. If soft tissue or hair samples are recoverable, toxicologists will test for the presence of drugs, alcohol, or toxins. This can reveal whether the child was incapacitated, neglected, or harmed through substances. It can also indicate whether foul play was carefully concealed under the guise of an accident. From there, investigators begin to build scenarios. They will test each theory against the physical evidence. Was this an abduction gone wrong? If so, the remains location may suggest panic on the part of the offender, a hurried disposal, a shallow concealment, a site chosen for convenience rather than calculation. Was this a concealment by someone close? In many child disappearance cases, sadly those closest to the victim are scrutinized first. Forensic evidence, whether fibers, DNA transfer, or burial method, can suggest familiarity and even implicate known individuals. Was it a stranger abduction? These are rarer, but possible. If the remains are found far from Ben Hill Road, in a secluded or high-risk area, investigators may begin to lean toward an outside offender. But if the remains are close to home, statistics and experience say investigators will look inward. Even after years, forensic evidence can still speak loudly. Soil samples might show whether the body was moved. Insects, root growth, and even pollen can help experts determine time of death and length of concealment. Items buried with the remains, clothing, jewelry, personal objects, can also be powerful indicators. A piece of fabric or a shoe may tell as much as a fingerprint. It is important to remember that when remains are found, they don't just answer the question of who, they begin to answer the questions of how, when, and sometimes even why. For the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation, this discovery could be the forensic breakthrough they've been chasing for years. But it also raises a haunting reality. If foul play is confirmed, then someone has carried a dark truth in silence all this time. And silence, as every detective knows, is rarely innocent. This is the stage where science becomes the voice of the voiceless. Summer can no longer speak for herself, but the evidence may speak for her. Whenever new developments surface in a long-running missing persons case, especially one involving a child, the ripple effect is almost immediate. For Summer Wells, the reported discovery of remains doesn't just shift the investigation, it reshapes the entire narrative. And at the very center of that narrative stand her parents, Don and Candus Wells. For years, investigators have carefully avoided directly accusing the family, yet the public conversation has been very different. Don's emotional interviews, where he alternated between regret, anger, and religious reflection, have always been picked apart. Every word, every slip, every contradiction has been replayed across media and forums. His statements about Summer being with God, or in a better place, struck many as troubling. Were these the words of a grieving father struggling with loss, or something more revealing? Then there's Candus, the last person confirmed to have seen Summer alive. Her timeline has shifted in subtle but crucial ways. From her account of planting flowers with her mother, to her retelling of Summer's walk into the house that final afternoon, inconsistencies have lingered. Detectives and the public alike have noticed gaps that never fully closed. Now, if the remains are confirmed as Summer's, every one of those inconsistencies will resurface, this time under sharper, harsher light. Could this discovery bring renewed scrutiny, or even charges? That's the question hanging in the air. The Tennessee Bureau of Investigation has stated repeatedly that no one has been cleared. That language has always kept the door open. But now, with potential forensic evidence in hand, the calculus changes. If physical evidence links the remains to a location, or to individuals in the Wells circle, prosecutors may begin building a case they couldn't before. It's also about community perception. Hawkins County has been split for years, some defending the Wells as grieving parents, others convinced they know more than they've admitted. This discovery won't quiet those divisions, it will amplify them. Neighbors, church members, even extended family will revisit what they saw, what they heard, and what they've always wondered but never said aloud. And here's the difficult reality. In many cases, when a child is found after years missing, suspicion does fall back on the family. Statistically, law enforcement often looks closest to home first, and the Wells' own behaviors, from social media rants to courtroom troubles, have already eroded public confidence. Now, with potential forensic evidence surfacing, the microscope grows sharper, and the questions grow louder. For Don and Candus, the pressure is no longer about speculation, it's about survival in the face of what could become a criminal case. And for the public, the question remains, were these parents victims of unrelenting suspicion, or were they carrying truths they never spoke? The moment the words "remains found" hit the news cycle, everything changes. Cases like Summer Wells don't just evolve, they explode. And when a case has already lived in the public eye for years, breaking developments ignite a storm that spreads far beyond Hawkins County. Headlines will be immediate, dramatic, and often premature. National outlets will frame the discovery as a long-awaited breakthrough. Local reporters will scramble for exclusive interviews, revisiting every old lead, every old suspect. And online, theories will spread like wildfire. In hours, speculation can harden into what people believe is fact, even when authorities are still careful to say "not yet confirmed." This is where the danger lies. Misinformation thrives in moments like this. Forums, Facebook groups, and YouTube channels will dissect every phrase in the TBI's press release. Some will argue the parents are guilty without proof. Others will insist it was a stranger abduction despite no evidence. Conspiracy theories about cover-ups, law enforcement failures, or even trafficking networks will resurface and gain traction. But here's the real challenge: how do you balance grief with accountability? When a child's remains are discovered, there's a human instinct to mourn. Communities gather, churches pray, vigils are held, and yet right alongside that grief comes anger, and with anger, the demand for justice. Families are often caught in the crossfire of public perception, simultaneously pitied and condemned. For investigators, media pressure is both a weapon and a burden. On one hand, public awareness keeps cases alive. On the other, too much noise can compromise the investigation, contaminate witness testimony, or push detectives to move faster than evidence allows. For Don and Candus Wells, the media storm could mean a revival of every past interview, every court record, every fight captured online. Public opinion may begin convicting them long before any courtroom does. In cases like this, the media becomes the battlefield. The truth risks getting buried under headlines, while the family and the community struggle to process the line between mourning a child and demanding answers about how she was lost. When a child's remains are found, the question shifts. It's no longer "where is she?" It becomes, who is responsible, and will they ever be held accountable? For Summer Wells, that's the painful crossroads now facing investigators, prosecutors, and her family. Justice can take many forms. In the best-case scenario, forensic evidence yields answers: DNA that links to a suspect, fibers or trace evidence that narrows down the scene, or even digital records tying someone to the place where her remains were found. That could open the door to criminal prosecution, charges for abduction, homicide, or concealment of a body. But these cases are complex. When years have passed, evidence degrades, memories fade, and witnesses change their stories. What seems obvious in the public eye can be nearly impossible to prove in court. And then there are civil avenues. Families sometimes pursue wrongful death suits or negligence claims when criminal cases stall. These can shine a light on failures, whether by institutions, law enforcement, or individuals, though they rarely deliver the full sense of justice that a criminal conviction would. But we also have to talk about something harder: the difference between justice and closure. For many families, the discovery of remains offers only partial answers. Yes, it may end the endless cycle of missing, but it begins a new cycle of grief, one rooted in finality. Closure implies peace, but truth often arrives fractured. Sometimes the system delivers one without the other. A family may receive justice in court, yet never know what really happened in those final moments. Or they may receive the truth, every detail of how a life was taken, but justice slips away because the evidence falls short of conviction. For Summer's family, the road ahead will be defined by this tension. They will be asked to navigate grief under the glare of public judgment. Investigators will weigh how much can truly be proven. And the community, already scarred by years of suspicion and unanswered questions, will demand both justice and closure, even though history tells us the two rarely arrive hand in hand. So the question lingers: when justice is uncertain and closure incomplete, what does justice for Summers truly mean? Tonight we've walked through the breaking reports of human remains being discovered, possibly tied to Summer Wells. We've examined what investigators are saying, what they're not saying, and how the ripple effect will shape her family, her community, and the pursuit of justice. But here's the truth we can't ignore: every official statement is carefully crafted. Every timeline leaves space for doubt. And every unanswered question only deepens the weight of this tragedy. For more than 2 years, Summer's name has echoed in the voices of those who refuse to forget her. And now, with this possible discovery, the world waits once again, not just for answers, but for accountability. The coming weeks will be critical. DNA tests, forensic examinations, and the language of press conferences will matter more than ever. And as the public, our responsibility is to stay informed, to question respectfully, and to keep Summer's story alive without fueling the wildfire of rumor and speculation. So I leave you with this question: if these remains are confirmed, what does justice for Summer Wells look like in your eyes? Is it a conviction, accountability from institutions, or simply the truth, no matter how painful? I want to hear your thoughts. Comment below and tell me what justice means to you in this case. And if you believe in shining light where others stay silent, join our community here on Detective Max. Subscribe, share this video, and stand with us as we continue to fight for truth, for Summer, and for every child still waiting to be found. Because one thing is certain: silence cannot protect the innocent. Only truth can.